Welcome to the Power of Partnership podcast. I'm Riane Eisler, President of the Center for Partnership Systems. This podcast brings you voices from the partnership movement, people using partnership practices to build a world that values caring, nature, and shared prosperity. The Power of Partnership podcast is hosted by Cherry Jacobs-Pruitt, a health policy and partnership scholar. And now on to today's POP podcast episode.
Welcome, Kaia. On behalf of Riane Eisler and the entire Center for Partnership Systems team, I want to welcome you to the Power of Partnership podcast.
Thank you, Cherry. I am so honored to be here speaking with you today.
So, Kaia, you are a writer, you're a freelance web designer, and you've been a long-time practitioner of Riane's work in helping promote the partnership movement. I'm so excited to be learning from you today and sharing with our audience how we can transform technology so it can be used to put partnership in harmony with profitability. So let's start by you sharing a little bit about the hows and when Riane Eisler's work and her partnership domination social lens continuum came into your life and how it's impacted you.
Sure. So I discovered Riane Eisler's work when I was in Chicago at a workshop with one of my mentors, and we went into a used bookstore. And we were in the Ethiopian food district, and we walked into this bookstore, and it was piled high with all sorts of books, not like the modern stores. And we were walking through the aisles, looking at different books on the shelves, and the chalice and the blade literally fell off the shelf and hit me on the head, like no joke. And my mentor, Genevieve Sprinkle, she said, "Oh my gosh, have you read that book? Clearly it wants you to read it." And I said, "I've never heard of this book." And she said, "Oh, you would be such a great person to read this book because you'll really get what Dr. Eisler is talking about." And when I read Dr. Eisler's book, The Chalice and the Blade, it became obvious to me that maybe I was missing some of the finer points of how our culture is shaped. And about a year after I read The Chalice and the Blade, I became a mother. And I had the first of my two kiddos. And all of a sudden, everything came rushing in. And I understood what the dominator mindset was and how it could hide in plain sight. And how this concept of the domination-partnership continuum was very important, not only to raising the next generation of children and creating a more equitable world, but also to my sanity as a mother. Because I didn't realize how much caring and caregiving had become devalued in the discourse of the world. And being in the tech fields and being in the sciences, I didn't realize how much I was in my mind and my logic and how dissociated I was from my own inner nurturing and my own inner caregiving. And so, I think that Dr. Eisler's work really opened my eyes to a paradigm shift that would become a large part of my work over the last decade.
Can you share some stories about how your realization of the domination partnership deepened in terms of how entrenched this mindset was?
Yeah, I started to realize that all of the perceived differences, whether they're Eastern or Western, masculine or feminine, capitalism, socialism, all of these binary systems that we're taught that it's one or the other. What really struck me was how the continuum of partnership and domination was underlying everything. It applied to all circumstances. It wasn't just about, the inequities in the world that are environmental or social or racial. It was this underlying story that could be consistently used to frame the idea of power over versus power with. And I think when I became a mother, I had my kiddos when I was in my mid-30s. I was 36 and 39. And I never really thought much about this paradigm because I was in my masculine. I was in my bits and pieces that were accepted into the system. And it wasn't until I was sitting in a nursing chair, rocking a baby, trying to figure out how this whole new task I had taken on of motherhood and this whole paradigm of who plays what role in the family, as far as, which roles are compensated economically, which roles are expected as the default parent. Why did I, as the female parent, beyond my biology, why was I expected to do this sort of second unpaid job? And I want to interject that my husband is awesome. He's a very amazing father, and he took on childcare duties with me with a vengeance. He was really very involved, but still, there was this assumption that caregiving was my role. And when it came home, when it became personal, I started to see how, I guess that's kind of selfish to say, but it didn't really hit me until it became personal. And once it became personal, it really elevated the idea that this dominator paradigm is subconscious to us. It's the water that we swim in. And we don't really understand that because we don't have anything to see that gives us a reference point to see it, right? Until we enter the space where there is now a hierarchy of whose time is more important, whose energy is more important, whose energy is prioritized. And even without meaning to, I went through that whole typical thing of, why is my husband still going to the gym? And why is he still hanging out with his friends? And meantime, I'm back here, doing a lot of laundry and watching the kids, and I've lost all of my social life. And what happened? I went underwater. And so it took that personal application of the dominator mindset, the subconscious dominator mindset, to make me realize how much it's present in the workplace, how much it's present in the economy, how much it's present within the stories that we tell ourselves. That's what I found, is that I was putting this dominator paradigm on myself without even realizing it, right? I was stepping into this role and losing myself. And because I'm a seeker, and, I'm not a counselor, I'm not a coach, I'm not out there working with folks about this stuff. I'm working in technology. I'm working in, day-to-day work. And I started to see this is something I need to speak up about, even though I'm not a quote unquote professional or coach or counselor. It's still something that nobody knows about. Why does nobody know about this thing? And so that's when I really started bringing Dr. Eisler's name up and her work up all over the place.
So now let's switch and start talking about how you use this awareness in your professional world in the technical field. I know that you talk a lot about the need to put partnership in harmony with profitability. So can you talk more about what you mean by that and how do we do that?
Profit in and of itself is not bad. What's the quote? It's the love of money that's at the root of all evil, right? Not money itself. And so I think that just like we have the in-breath and the out-breath, the day and the night, we need to make sure that we are still taking care of ourselves and creating financial abundance. But the difference between putting profit first and putting profit into harmony with partnership is that in a partnership paradigm, profit is shared equally amongst people. People are all being taken care of by the work that we're doing. And what happens in sort of the predatory capitalist mindset is that profit becomes the only goal and people get left by the wayside. That it's either a win-lose situation and you're going to either win or you're going to lose, or it's a win-win-win situation and it's perceived that nobody really wins because nobody's really scaling to the top of the billionaire pile of power, right? That hierarchy of power. If you look at how our news talks about money, right? Money is a pyramid. Money and power are a pyramid where only a few people are really at the heights of this pyramid. And in a partnership mindset, you can use technology to serve. My motto in the work that I do with websites and teaching people how to do websites is putting technology back in service to life, as opposed to being in service to technology, which is in service to profit, which comes from extractive, exploitative mindsets.
And so what does that look like when you're teaching people how to build their website?
I think that technology is really cool. I love technology. It's a tool to build things with. But when it comes to using technology to serve the greater good, let me give you some numbers. In 2024, Wix, the website building platform, they spent over $100 million in advertising costs, right? Squarespace, I've got the number over here. Squarespace spent 44% of their budget on advertising, right? They sold to over 31 million customers. And yet, some reports show that over 80% of the people who start a DIY website abandon their project because they don't have the tools that they need to understand the process. So here we have these big companies coming out here, and I don't think this is their intention, and I don't want to be negative towards these tools because these tools are amazing. But the focus is all on how much money can we spend to make how much money so that we can report profits to our shareholders, while the people who come into our tool sets with their dreams and their hopes and their conception that they can use this technology to take their gifts and service out into the world, we're going to drop 80% of them off at the curb and not care. We're not putting investment into the success of the people that come to our platforms. We're putting our investment in getting them to sign up and pay us. So how does that manifest in how I approach technology? I want to go deeper than the superficial fast food, click on this, slap your logo in, put a few lines of text, hit the AI button and go. Because I understand that at the root of success is connection and community. At the root of success is being able to take your lessons that you've learned in life and your knowledge and your gifts and sharing those gifts back with the world. So what I do is I teach people the process. And this idea, the myth that you just grab a template, tweak the magic widgets, throw in your logo and go, sidelines a lot of people. And I feel like that doesn't do service to those who want to share their gifts with the world using technology as a tool to reach more people, right? So technology is an amplifier. And if we can amplify partnership and we can teach people how to use the tools without breaking the bank to get there. I mean, I've seen numbers that it's, you start at $1,500 to going up to $10,000 to build a website. And if you're just somebody who's gone through life and learned some lessons and you want to share them or teach them, or you want to share your art, that's not a money game. That's a partnership game. And so the way that I envision using technology is in service to the greater good. And by demystifying my own, taking my own experience and using it to demystify the process so that more people have access to these tools. And I don't actually even want to build websites for folks anymore. I just want to teach people how to go through the process to prepare their content, to do what I call internet plumbing and hook up their tech stack and sync it all together so that when they show up to that DIY building process, they're prepared, they can succeed, and they can promote their own work and go out into the world that in a way that, here's the profit part, supports them financially, but also shares their gifts with the world for a win-win-win situation.
You are listening to the Power of Partnership podcast. We hope you are enjoying today's episode and you will consider joining our family of sponsors. Or you can help us attract sponsors by downloading, following, or subscribing to the series and liking and rating each episode you view on YouTube. We also would love to hear from you, including if you have a partnership story that you would like to share. Reach out to us at center@partnershipway.org. And now, back to today's episode.
But I think the most exciting thing that I find about sharing Dr. Eisler's work in the tech field actually happens, this is kind of strange, through LinkedIn connections with the people that I know who are doing men's work, right? Because women have been talking about this for a long time. Women have been standing up and working to reclaim their power and refute the cultural norms that say that, the caregiving side, the feminine, the inner world emotions, they're not as important as logic and science and mind, right? They're not as important as big power and money and technology. But what's happening now is men are starting to realize, hey, maybe there's something to this work, right? And so I know you interviewed Jordan Holmes, Dexter Spitz, and he's doing that work with How Men Cry. I have a very good friend. His name is Dr. Jason Frischman. He has the Journeyman organization, and he talks to fathers who want to be more involved in their families and they don't know how. And who else? Brad Johnson and David Smith at Johns Hopkins and at the Marine Academy. They're all starting to realize that Dr. Eisler has been on to this for decades. And there's something really valuable in this when it comes to men's mental health, the health of relationships and families, breaking the trauma cycle in children, dealing with addiction and suicide and all the really big, heavy topics that are in the news that the media likes to catastrophize. There's an answer to this, and it comes from connection, comes from reconnection. It comes from paying attention to how we feel, how we relate to one another. And guys are starting to clue into what's going on. And I think that that's one of the most exciting parts of my work is being able to weave this web. There's if I can share this little thing, it's kind of fun. It's a poem. It's, we are the weavers. We are the woven ones. We are the dreamers. We are the dream. We are the flow. We are the ebb. We are the weavers and we are the web. And I find that to be a very beautiful hybrid of we are the web, like the internet technology, and we are the web as in we are the weaving of people across the world through connections that we make using technology as a tool to come together and shift the paradigm in how we operate.
That's beautiful. And what a beautiful poem. That's great. So I know, a big focus of today's interview is on websites and the intentionality behind creating websites that put partnership into harmony with profitability. But I also know that you've been working in the broader technical field for decades. So I'm wondering what your thoughts are about what next for all of technology. I know that's a super broad question, but what can you share about how can we transform all technology so that it is in putting partnership in harmony with profitability?
So when we think about science and we think about technology, we're at a point where the science and technology that we understand are things that we've been able to measure so far, right? We've been able to measure the physical world. We've been able to measure things that are tangible. But I believe that as we evolve as a species and as we evolve our hearts and our community and our ability to create this web, the definition of science and technology is going to expand. And I think it is really upon our shoulders. It's our responsibility to make sure that as technology expands its capacities to the places where we haven't been able to measure things before, we can't measure feelings. We can't measure emotions or, this energy that flows between us when we have a certain approach to things. But that's changing. And if we keep the partnership mentality in mind as technology grows, I think that there's going to be a positive influence on the development of technology if we can do it from a partnership paradigm as opposed to developing our technologies from this idea of conquering and conquest and control. Technology used for a dominator objective that's where we get war. That's where we get destruction, and that's where we get, environmental collapse and biospheric collapses. When we take technology and we use it for the good of just a few people or the good of just one species, the whole system falls apart. So if we can grow up and go through our technological rite of passage and we can make our economies sacred again, and we can think about the commons and the environment and the mental health and the emotions of people, and then we put technology in service to that. Again, that's why technology in service to life is really powerful. And the only way we're going to get there is if we change the way we approach being, because technology is just our tool, right? So when we shift ourselves into a partnership mindset, that's how we take technology and shift it to partnership use cases. So technology and this podcast was actually how I connected with y'all in the first place. Because as a Gen X person, I was born in 1976. As a Gen Xer, I straddle this world between the academics of, the scholarly academics of science and social media. And so my initial contact with y'all was to help you make graphics for your Instagram and to try and memify the work of Dr. Eisler to make it more accessible to more people. So it makes me so thrilled that we're in this third season of the podcast already, and that the podcast is being so well received across the world, because I really think that technology amplifying Dr. Eisler's work is a perfect example of what I've been talking about here. So thank you, Cherry, for being the host of this podcast and interviewing people from senators to teachers to regular old everyday tech people like myself to talk about how partnership is so universally applicable.
Thank you so much, Kaia. It's been quite a gift for me. I do want to let our listeners know, too, that I'll be putting all of these resources that Kaia has been mentioning in the show notes for today's episode. I'm also going to add a link to the Center for Partnership Systems Technology Toolkit. Another link that I'm going to put in, Kaia, you mentioned a couple of the episodes that are in the Power of Partnership podcast series. But I also want to call out the episode that I'll include a link to, which is called Artificial Technology with John C. Havens. So all of these will help you kind of dig into these areas that Kaia is talking about. So I know, Kaia, you've shared so many resources already throughout this podcast, but I'm wondering if you have any additional resources you want to make sure our audience knows about.
The Webmaker Circle has workshops on a monthly basis. We have, live 1-hour workshops that come with a workbook that help you process through the pre-work of creating your own website. So if you're trying to take your partnership work out into the world and you're doing your own website, I would recommend come to webmakercircle.com. And then there's also a company that I'm a big fan of. Katie White and her team have a company called Strong Brand Social. And if you've already got a website and you're trying to take your work out into the world so that you can make a positive impact while creating a profitable business for yourself to support yourself, Strong Brand Social has an amazing workshop. They call it FTA. And what they teach you how to do is to make an algorithm-proof social media strategy so that you can actually take that work that you're creating and putting out there and expand your reach so that more people know about it, and you can drive a sort of a more successful, purpose-driven, heart-centric business using those tools. So, end to end, there are lots of resources out there. There are lots of ways to take your business and move it into the partnership paradigm. You don't have to listen to the old stories of, predatory capitalism and this sort of win-lose mentality where you have to beat your competitors. There's enough to go around. A non-zero-sum world is possible. And in fact, I think it's going to be required because we're going to be entering a new paradigm here in the next few generations where, we're really starting to understand, I think, that the victimization and blame of others for problems isn't working, right? And we are in this unique time in history where resources can be shared so freely, and the technology is there to amplify the caregiving, nurturing, nourishing, partnership-based resources that we have to share with the world. And, things are shifting. So the tools are out there. If anyone has any questions about any of this, feel free to hit me up.
So, Kaia, this has been so wonderful speaking with you today. I'm wondering if you have some final words that you'd like to share with the audience.
I think about my children, and I think about the ability that I've had to share with them about this water that we swim in, that when they're dealing with school or they're dealing with how they feel about themselves in the world and how they relate to their friends or how they relate to things that are challenging in the world, things that come up in the news. I mean, my 12-year-old's old enough that he's talking about politics. And it's been such a gift to give them these words, domination and partnership. Although sometimes when I lose my cool with my kids and I'm shouting at them to get in the car because they haven't remembered to put on their socks, my son will go, "Mom, you're stepping into domination." And that makes me kind of chuckle because I know he's right. But there's these everyday little moments. It doesn't have to be a big thing or a grand thing to shift our own relationship to the dominator-partnership paradigm, right? As Dr. Eisler says, it's not one or the other, it's a spectrum. And every step that we can take along the road towards more partnership and more supportive, more caring, more conscious systems thinking about the health and well-being of the all of everything is one more step that changes the culture. So it doesn't matter if people see it. It doesn't matter if it makes a big splash or makes the front page of the news. Everybody has the power to shift the world towards a more partnership-oriented paradigm through the choices that you make in your everyday life and even in the thoughts within your own head.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Kaia. It's really been a huge pleasure.
I am so happy that we're getting out there with this message, and I really appreciate you, Cherry. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Power of Partnership podcast. We're grateful to Rising Appalachia for the use of resilience as our Power of Partnership theme music. If you would like us to feature your partnership story, or if you would like to be a proud sponsor of the Power of Partnership podcast, please contact us at center@partnershipway.org. We hope you enjoyed this episode and will leave us a review on your favorite podcast channel. And don't forget to subscribe to be notified when new episodes are released. I'm Cherry Jacobs Pruitt. See you next time on the Power of Partnership podcast.
I am resilient. I trust the movement. I negate the chaos. Uplift the negative. I'll show up at the table again and again and again. I'll close my mouth and learn to live.